Okay, now we get to start a little bit on the Mada side, on the neuroscience side, on the psychological side, and we're going to start building our models. Before we do that, I know last week we dealt a little bit with the Machshava challenge of neuroscience in terms of Bechira, but there's another totally different aspect. I know whenever I start talking about psychology, there's two different type of responses we have. One type of response is blah, 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 blah. Like, are we really just guessing? Isn't it's just speculative? We went through fads of behavioralism. We went through fads of cognitive. Like, aren't we just guessing and stabbing in the dark because it's just a game? That's on the one side. And on the other side, okay, the complete other side isn't it a little bit scary to get involved in the concept of trying to figure out Bnei Adam? Isn't part of the whole avoda, if not that philosophically it takes away, we get to a point of no bechira, but isn't our whole avoda not having a recipe? Isn't there something scary about having a recipe? Now the truth is, I think the answer to both of these sides, even though they're coming from the opposite direction, one saying that we can't possibly figure out, and one being scared that we might possibly figure it out, I think that for myself, this is one answer in both ways. The fact that we have different theories in Bnei Adam, whether it's behavioral or whether it's behavioral, whether it's cognitive, all the different theories which we've had through the time, it's not because we tried something and we realized it was wrong. Okay? Well, the things which we were tested, it's not speculative. We know that the aspects are true, but we know that they're only pieces. Okay, if we bring the mashal of chinuch and parenting, I could be doing great parenting, but there's also other pieces involved. There's society involved, and there's friends involved, and there's things which happen in a person's life. So the fact that we take different pieces and each one holds true, the person, the human being, has so many layers and is so deep and is so complex that even though we know that we're walking towards a better avoda, okay, we know that there's always going to be layers which we're getting closer. There's going to be deeper layers. Okay, there is nobody in psychology claims that we figured out the whole system. We have this piece, and we add this piece, and we add this piece, and we add this piece. And that really deals with both of the issues. Okay? What we're going to be dealing with is not speculative at all. Okay? There's things which are tested, and they are true. But that doesn't mean that they work like a recipe, because even when they are advancing us and bringing us to a certain point, that doesn't mean that there aren't other aspects which are happening. And part of what we're going to go through is showing different. Today we're going to be dealing with a basic model. What we're going to be doing over the course of the VAD is taking each piece of that model and expanding it and seeing how broad and how endless it is and how many different pieces can come into each of those pieces. So that really deals with both of those sides. Okay? Rav Hutner in Pachad Yitzchak, and this is his Chama for all, says that something which is unique about avoda, or about emuna, or about chovos halavavos, is that as opposed to other limud, let's say limud halacha, where when you learn it prepares you for the avoda, but it's not at the beginning. You haven't started being mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis. Okay, when you learn hilchos tzitzis, you haven't started to be mekayim the mitzvah of tzedakah when you learn hilchos tzedakah, but by emuna, and by avoda, by yira, by ava, okay, by midos, you do start the keel of the midah when you start understanding and working on the midah. In the Ramchal, when he uses the language of hisbonanos, he doesn't use it in the same way that the Hasidim use it. He talks about in terms of looking into and trying to understand and trying to be osek in an understanding way, and that itself is part of the avodah of building midos. Okay, today we're really going to touch on two basic introductory pieces. One is as far as this area of learning and behavior and habits is one of the early rules of neuroscience is what's usually phrased, and always phrases are incomplete, and they, on the one hand, give a nice structure, but they're incomplete, and we'll point to the incompleteness, but it's a nice place to start, is that neurons which fire together wire together. Meaning, okay, we can't get into all of the neuroscience, but the synapse, we actually develop a habit that is actually changing something which happens in our brain. The synapses start to fire together, okay, when they tend to fire together, and that's going to be what we say, developing habit, when they develop a pattern of firing at the same time, they now physiologically, in the body, okay, now they start to wire together so that they don't actually fire at the same time, but that the pattern is actually hardwired. Okay? That's going to be very important as we walk forward. It's not going to be complete, and it's not going to be 100%, and it's not going to be the only way that they wire together. Okay? But that's going to be the first model we talk about, is the concept of that neurons or cells which fire together, which develop as a habit, wire together neurologically in our mind. They start to automatic physiologically be melded together. And there's a plasticity, there's something which is actually changing in our brain. The reason why that's going to be important is when we talk about changing habits, it's not going to be enough for us to build new habits. We're going to have to deal with the physiological change which has already happened. We can't just form. We can't just deal with new habits. We have to figure out how to relate to unwiring the old habits. Okay? That's number one. Okay? Number two is going to be the basic model. We're going to expand on it, but the basic of the assumption of behavioral patterns and the psychology of behavioral patterns, which is going to be a basic pattern of cue, okay, meaning something which sets off the response, okay, a response, that's okay, and a reward. Okay? Those are the three pieces which we are going to go on from now and try to understand and expand each of three. But these are the two basic models which we're going to be working off of. Understanding the fact that when we do things that actually changes the plasticity, that changes what's happening in our brain, and therefore we're going to have to affect that if we want to change our habit, and we're going to have to figure out how that's created in order to build a habit. And on the other side, okay, the basic model which is assumed, and we're going to challenge that, but which is assumed that we have three elements: the cue, that which kicks off a habit, a response, or a pattern of responses, we'll talk about that, and then a reward. We're going to have to figure out what the role of reward is, okay? But this is the model which we have to have in our notebook or in our head, which we are from now on going to expand upon, okay? But that's the model we're working with, okay? Okay. We didn't have a specific avoda now. We're going to pick that up as we go through the week. Right now, we just want to set up the models. Okay? Looking forward to the rest of this week. Kol tov.